Today on episode 118 of Rail Talk, we are back for the new year. We talked to Michelle Yu about everything going on in California racing. John lets us in on the behind the scenes of the American Graded Stakes Committee rulings. Lots of good Derby and Oaks preps have already happened. Action-packed episode. I'm Joe Bianca. I'm an ownership advisor at West Point Thoroughbreds, and I want to wish a belated, and of course it's me, so it's belated, happy birthday to all the thoroughbreds in America, including the now 3-year-old filly Super Corridora and now 4-year-old filly Nitrogen. John, we're just a couple weeks away from seeing what you look like in a tux.
Jonathan Green, general manager of DJ Stable. And Joe, this will be the third time in 7 years that I get to wear a tux.
I know, but I didn't watch the other times.
and hopefully we will be sitting at a table next to you, I'm assuming, down in beautiful and sunny Florida in a couple of weeks. And, it's great that the show is doing so well, Joe, but probably more importantly, look at all the special events that you and I get to attend. I mean, it's, from the Derby to the Breeders' Cup to the Eclipse. I mean, they're going to have to pretty much ban us pretty soon from all these award ceremonies.
I mean, if they haven't already, I think we're good in the hood. And since you mentioned it, we're up to over 7 million views on YouTube for the show, over 27,000 subscribers. If you haven't yet, please subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Audible. We appreciate all you guys tuning in and supporting us for 2025. Let's have an amazing 2026 and start the show. The opinions expressed on Rail Talk are those of hosts Joe Bianca and Jon Green and do not reflect those of anybody we work with or work for. Rail Talk is sponsored by Fasig-Tipton. Monster year for Fasig-Tipton in 2025. Records dropping all over the place. And now we have a flash sale to start 2026. Bidding is now open for the Express Kid flash sale. Express Kid won his most recent start, the $300,000 Springboard Mile Stakes at Remington Park by 6 1/4 lengths. Gate to wire, 85 buyer, got 10 Kentucky Derby qualifying points. So you want a Derby horse, you don't have one in the barn yet, get involved. Bidding is open until this Friday, January 9th at 4 p.m. Paramount Sales is consigning. Very, very cool opportunities available for inspection at Turf Paradise in Phoenix. So definitely a great opportunity that you couldn't get anywhere else other than the digital sale. So shout out to Fasig for being on the forefront of that. And another thing they're on the forefront of is the Gallop only sale coming to Fasig Mid-Atlantic this May. John's got a little bit more on that.
Yeah, according to their press release that was sent out a couple of days ago, shortly after last year's sale, Fasig-Tipton announced a new format for the 2026 Mid-Atlantic May sale. No official times will be recorded or published by Fasig. In addition, the use of the riding crop will be restricted. Riders will not be permitted to remove their hands from the reins to strike a horse at any point before a breeze, during a breeze, or while galloping out. And there's a couple of quotes from Fasig-Tipton President and CEO Boyd Browning, including, quote, "We had been listening and observing what was happening in the 2-year-old sales market for a period of time, and we're concerned about the emphasis on a single factor, the time that was being reported, being the primary evaluative tool in a lot of instances." So kudos to Fasig for making this decision. Boyd goes on to say, quote, "I think that the untimed aspect will eliminate making the breeze on show day maybe the most important day of that horse's life." So I'm glad to report that Fasig is going with an untimed breeze show, gallop show, however you want to call it, for the upcoming Fasig-Tipton Mid-Atlantic May sale. Joe, why is that so important? I am glad you asked that question, my friend. Well, it's because that you have to nominate your horses for this unique sale in May over the next couple of weeks. So by all means, if you have any questions, contact Fasig-Tipton at your usual channels, and Boyd and Anna and the rest of the group will explain to you exactly how the Mid-Atlantic May sale will unfold this year. But it's a great opportunity, a great aspect, and don't forget that nominations for that unique sale are coming due in the next couple of weeks.
So we're already off to a great start because I remembered to plug the subscription in the open. I usually do it at the very end of the episode, and Patty hates me for it. So way to go, me, Joe, and John, off to a great start in 2026. 2025 is in the books, and so are the handle and purse numbers. Not great, not disastrous, but certainly not good. Handle dropped a lot in December, which led to a $2.1 percent drop in total handle for 2025 when compared to the 2024 figures. Handle was down 7.32% in December, which was a lot. So a total of just over $11 billion was wagered in the U.S. last year, compared to over $11.2 billion in 2024. Quoting from our friend Bill Finley's article at the TDN, handle peaked in 2003 at $15.18 billion. When factoring in inflation, betting handle has fallen about 57% over the last 22 years. So that's a pretty big worrying trend. Obviously, I think that is mainly driven by the regular meat and potatoes horse players fleeing the game, in part because of the CAWs kind of just basically crowding them out and, making it even harder for an already tough and already expensively priced game to make money. 2025 marked the sixth time in the last 7 years that handle has fallen, the outlier being 2021 when handle figures rose by 11.8%, but that was compared to 2020 when we lost a ton of racing dates because of the COVID pandemic. Purses were also down slightly, which was a bit of a surprise, I think more so than the handle numbers. It was $1.22 billion in purses were paid out, 2.53% decline from the prior year. In 2024, purses had risen 0.5%. If you're looking for kind of a slight silver lining here, I would say it's that average wagering per race day was up. So the figure was up by 3.27%, a little over $3 million average wagering per race day from 2.97 million in 2024. Fewer races were run during the year, 29,401 versus 30,852 in 2024. That's a lot of numbers I just threw at you. I think there's a lot to digest there. John, why don't you take it away and give us your top line observations from the handle and purse numbers?
Yeah, Joe, thanks. From top down, I would say that these are pretty staggering and upsetting negative numbers. Again, it's kind of like death by 1,000 paper cuts. Every year we go down. Every year, the theories are, hey, we should try this or we should do that. Or if we get more horses in races, that statistically has proven over the years that more people would wager on those races. Well, we're going to have the litmus test coming up because some racetracks now, Gulfstream Park, for example, in particular, are reducing dates. And by reducing dates, and therefore should, based on the number of horses that stable at those tracks or facilitate races at those tracks, you should have more horses in less racing dates, theoretically. So we'll be able to prove that theorem, coming up next year at Gulfstream Park in certainly in the championship meet, if not other months. But it's alarming, Joe. It's nothing new, unfortunately. And you and I have talked, and other people, the greater minds than ours, have talked about alternatives. And is there a way to get fixed odd wagering? Is there a way to get cross promoted with other sports, where we have, the Giants losing and nitrogen winning, a race as a coupled bet. So there are solutions that are hopeful, I think, that are out there. I don't know how likely they are based on all of the legislation and rules and regulations you have to, kind of piece together and match up to make sure that you can have these types of wagers. But yeah, it's not great. As a matter of fact, some would say it's negative across the board, and it's continuing the negative spiral of where we are. You hit the nail on the head. It's because we're missing out on the middle ground of gamblers. Certainly we have people who come on big days and they bet, a couple $100 here and there, and then they never come back, again until the following year when there's a big event. And then you have the super large, groups that are cobbling together money and basically taking advantage of the pools the way they are. And then it's squeezing out the middle person. I know, I wasn't a big gambler anyway, but Joe, I'd be lying to you if I said I made maybe $100 worth of bets in all of 2025. And it's primarily because it's I could take my $100 and I can bet on a multitude of other options at this point and not have to worry about the odds changing. Once I place my bet, I'm locked. So, and I love this sport. So it's it's not a question of like this is anything new, and I think that's what Bill was saying in his article. But it's a question of, are we going to eventually wake up and say, okay, now we need to implement some of these changes, otherwise, we will go extinct. The other concern that you and I have talked about before is that what it's doing is it's forcing the industry. Some could say good, some could say negative, forcing the industry to come up with alternative ways to come up with purses. And what's happening now is that a greater percentage every year of our purse structure is basically being held up by alternative means, which means that now we're going to be in a point where we're going to be held hostage by the slot machines, or we're going to be held hostage by the table games that are associated with. And then if there is a decoupling event, which may happen, okay, even though we're fighting it, it may happen in one state or another, then we're really screwed, because then we don't have this artificial prop anymore that is pushing up purse money. So it's a concern not only just in the article itself and the fact that we're losing money in the average bettor, but it's a concern structurally to me as far as an industry. How do we fix this to make it so horses are still running for enough money to make it lucrative enough for people to stay involved?
Yeah, and like the fact that purses are down is even if it's a small percentage, like that's pretty worrying. But you can only lose so much handle over the years, and as we said, this is the 6th year in the last 7 that handle is dropping. You only lose that much handle before it eventually does affect the purse accounts, and it seems to be what's happening here. And to your point, I would think that the only states that I think that subsidy is ironclad and safe is Kentucky and maybe Arkansas. I don't even think it's safe in New York, unfortunately. I think for now it is, but we kind of run this existential, continuous existential risk of losing like the pegs that are propping up this game if we don't have horse players continuing to bet into it. And I'm with you, like. I know it's only a week into the year, but I've placed one bet so far this year, and like that's not my norm. But I'm just like every other horse player. I'm just so tired of it's an expensive game to begin with when it comes to takeout, and that's something I think about this. I always think about the Simpsons episode where they kind of flash back into Ned Flanders' upbringing and why he is the way he is. And it was because his parents were like huge beatniks and they refused to discipline him. So he eventually was like, disciplined hard by a therapist and then like kind of bottled it all up. And his parents go to the therapist, we've tried nothing and we're all out of ideas. And that's kind of how I feel about racing pretty often. And it's like we don't cut takeout. We don't have like major, promotional marketing campaigns. Like you said, we don't. I mean, maybe we are doing it behind the scenes, but I haven't seen any outward efforts to pair us with mainstream sports and try to get some of that handle to cross over. So it's like, what are we really trying to do to increase that handle? And, I think about the Griffin Johnson thing last year. And I do think that overall he's been a net positive for the business. He's bringing new eyes to the game, people who would never have discovered the business organically. But eventually that's got to translate into dollars. That's got to translate into actual tangible support for the game, either through the betting windows or ownership or ideally both. So I would just love to hear more from, the people who gave Griffin Johnson awards all year. What is the next step to convert those people into customers? And, obviously it's not all on him. Like he's coming in at a late date and like we've done a terrible job of like building that foundation. But I just think, any kind of new idea that we're embracing has to eventually have a conversion to customers. And it just hasn't happened so far. And, I will say that I do think average wagering per race day being up is a good thing because I've said for many years that there are too many races being run. There are too many racetracks, there are too many races being run. There's too many graded stakes and stakes, which we'll get to in a little bit. So I do think that there has been like a necessary contraction, but obviously I'm not going to be like, yeah, woo, we're running fewer races. Like what great news for the industry. Obviously there are some downside to that, but at least like we're kind of getting our head out of our asses a little bit when it comes to how many races we need to be running relative to the full crop or relative to the customer base that we have. Field size was up slightly, and I think that has a big, that's a big byproduct of that. It wasn't a huge increase. It was 0.37%, but it's 7.47 starters per race. So any kind of uptick in field size is going to be big for the industry if we can, get that growing and get that to be a consistent thing. But yeah, it's just unfortunately these numbers are not surprising, like you said, John.
Right.
And I'm dying for some people in the industry. We just had the racetrack symposium. Obviously, I didn't pay attention to all of it, but I didn't see a ton of new ideas coming out of that of how to grow the pie when it comes to our core customer, which is the better. And if anything, we're just trying to stave off the demise because vis-a-vis the CAWs versus the regular bettors. It's well, what kind of, I'm not going to say toothless, but what kind of half measures can we do so we don't chase away the CAW bettors, because then we're really screwed, but also protect some of the meat and potatoes horse players. I think you have to start with takeout decreases. I think that's, pricing the game more attractively is something that in general we do not do in this industry. And that's the first step, I think, to bring some of these disaffected horse players back. But John, when's the last big takeout cut you saw, and when's the last big olive branch that was extended to the horse player? I haven't seen it.
Well, I think that you talk about half measures and maybe small steps in the right direction. I do think that there have been certain dates that smaller racetracks in particular have announced that they're CAW free. And also, I think that you have to give, a tip of the cap to NYRA, where at least they said, hey, we recognize that CAWs move the needle as far as odds. So we're going to put a hard cap on how late in the game before the race starts that they can actually wager. Now, you can make the argument, what's the difference of 2 minutes or 1 minute before post in the grand scheme of things? But I think that was one of the measures where they were we can't go too far in. We can't say that, 10 minutes, before the race starts, we're ending all CAW. And we can't say that, in the gate, because that doesn't do it. But they don't want to, like you said, drive away the CAWs. It's a very delicate balance that they have to go through and they have to try. But I don't know what the answer is, Joe. And I like to think that you and I speak to a lot of people in this industry, and from the average bettor all the way up to the Pat Cummings of the world and everyone in between. And I don't think anyone has a real, solid answer as far as what to do, other than let's just not, upset the apple cart and chase everybody away, which is never really the right answer. Can I go back to something you said, because I have a genuine question for you, and I know you and I joke around a lot, but this is a serious question. So the Griffin Johnson, I'll call it experiment now, has been in place for 2 years, primarily, headed by you guys at West Point, and we've been involved, kind of as a partner, but not really to the extent that you guys have. Have you seen an increase in people who have reached out to you guys and have said, I was, thinking about being in racing. I saw the Griffin Johnson, or my kids saw Griffin Johnson, and that's why I want to hear what your pitch is. Or it just doesn't even matter because, the elite people, people that can afford to be in these partnerships, are older and more well established. So they don't really even, Griffin Johnson doesn't even show up on the radar unless they have kids or grandkids that are fans of his. What's is there any kind of effect? Is there a Griffin Johnson effect at this point, from you guys?
Yeah, I know. I would say not materially in terms of the business of West Point so far, but we do get a lot more leads from younger people than we had ever gotten before. So that's a first step, but it's tough on the ownership side, because you have to have a lot of disposable income.
Yeah.
Even in a syndicate, to spend 20, 30 grand on a racehorse, you got to have a good amount of disposable income to get involved in something like that. So I'm hoping that, those leads that we are getting, the seeds are being planted for them to own with us down the line. It hasn't materialized yet, I think, because of that, barrier to entry for young people. I couldn't have afforded, still couldn't fucking afford to do this, but I really couldn't afford to do it when I was in my 20s. So I haven't seen that yet from a dollar standpoint, but I do think we have gotten a lot of people who have called us and said, hey, I saw Sandman,
Right.
I'm following Griffin and want to know more. So I think that that's a good thing. But that's why all the more reason why I think we need to leverage what he's doing to make them horse players, because
Right.
you don't need $1 million to become a horse player. Like, you need some money, but just to become like a recreational weekend warrior horse player, you can do that on a regular salary. I've been doing it since I was 16 and made no money.
Right.
So I think that is the first step, is to make them into bettors, and then eventually down the line try to convert them into owners. So,
Right.
like I said, I think that he has done a good job bringing new people into the game, just eyeballs. But and again, it's like not all on him. It's on us
No,
as
it's
an
not
industry to come together and put our heads together and figure out, okay, what do we do now that we have these people captured, their attention's captured? How do we convert that into business? And again, like I have very little confidence in the people that have, kind of overseen the handle decline over the last 20 years to be able to figure that out. And, that's why I think that this year, 2026, and you saw it last year in 2025, there has to be more focus on the better. And John, I appreciate you letting me rail about this on the show so often, because I know you're not a horse player, but I think you realize how crucial it is not to lose it. Yeah,
it's the fuel that basically runs the engine, and sales are through the roof. You talk about $20,000 can't get you a piece of a horse in partnership. I mean, it's not even, you can hardly park your car at Keeneland or Fasig at the sales, without $20,000 in your pocket these days. So it's impossible on that front to get in. But that's not the part we need to worry about right now. It's okay. We have that part of, we have that finger in the dam to make sure it doesn't leak, on that side, and that's also propped up primarily by tax advantages as well. Okay. How do we put our finger in this hole in the dam also, which is the purse monies that are dwindling, and I think are going to dwindle precipitously, because it's not getting any better. It's not like that. There's going to be less wagering options out there, or it's not going to be less effective or harder to be able to look on your phone and bet on something. So, I mean, the major leagues of all the sports are not only, they used to it used to be the dirty little secret. Like, we're not going to talk about the point spread. We're not going to talk about, the odds of this guy hitting a home run, or this guy sinking a third, free throw in a row, or whatever it is. Now it's like they're up in front, where literally, as a guy who's dribbling the ball up up past half court, it's like, if you had bet that Joe Smith was going to turn the ball over by halftime, by half court, you would have lost. It's already, the odds are already scrolling on the bottom. So they're proud of the fact that people can wager on it. Now we're going to continue to lose, betting money to the ease and the promotion of these sports that actually have a central figure or a group of, central body that actually runs the sport.
Yeah. And not to keep harping on it, but that's kind of, I think the death blow kind of was how long we had the monopoly on online wagering and did not grow the business. And now we're swimming upstream in a big way with all the legal sports betting, which honestly, just as an aside, I don't love that in my sports. I really don't love when I'm watching sports and the fucking lines are all across the screen all the time, live lines and this and that. Can I just watch the game? Do I have to constantly be prodded to bet the sports, which I already have an affinity for and a proclivity for? I don't like how ubiquitous it is now. And I do think that there's going to be some kind of pushback from that now that so many people are betting sports, and a lot of people are going to lose money and, get disaffected and disillusioned by that. So just as an aside, I really don't like how much it's infiltrated the sports, viewing experience.
Right.
But yeah, this is something that I want to, in 2026, anytime and we'll try to do it too. If people will come on the show, anytime anybody interviews the head of a track or somebody who has a decision-making position at one of these tracks or one of these companies, I want a lot of questions to be asked of them. What are you doing to bring new horse players in? I just feel like there's been so long where that was not even really a consideration or a conversation, and that needs to end. We need to get to the point where that should be question one: is look at the handle numbers. Do you feel comfortable with that? If not, what are you going to do to improve them? So I think that's where we need to pivot in 2026 as members of the media, such as we are,
And I think we also need to hammer home, and our intrepid producer, Patty Wolf, thank you for reminding me about this. We need to hammer home, why not fixed odds? All the other major sports have fixed odds where you know what you're betting and what your rate of return is going to be. You can literally go on DraftKings and say, if I'm going to bet $100 on this team, I'll win 382. And because of my OCD, I bet like $102 to make it an even 400, which I lose. But that's beside. But the fixed odds have to be, it's got to be a two-prong attack, Joe. Like you said, what are we doing to get other people, not even younger people, but just other people, to wager on our sport? And would fixed odds, ultimately be part of the solution for this?
And kind of relatedly, the technology's got to get better too, because the technology that the sports books are working with is like, we're basically on an abacus, and they're like the super genius AI computer, comparatively. So that's something that needs to improve as well, because, again, like with the odds drops and all that stuff, like, people think it's past posting. At the very least, it's shitty technology. That's giving bad optics to those kind of things. And that's something that needs to be fixed and be worked on as well. Rail Talk is sponsored by the Green Group, the #1 accounting firm in the horse business. No other CPA firm knows the horse industry like they do. Len and DJ Stable had a tremendous year in 2025. Shout out to him. Shout out to John. Shout out to the whole team of people behind the scenes, the trainers, all the barn help, the bloodstock agents, everybody who makes it go. But Len is at the top of that food chain for a reason. His vision, he's a revolutionary in this game. Like, he's doing it with a small team and is competing with some of the biggest hitters in the business. And the Green Group is kind of the foundation of his business knowledge. The Green Group is the #1 accounting firm in the horse business. They have close to 1,000 clients in this industry. There's nobody else you should go to with your taxes. You need someone who knows this industry inside and out, and Len is that guy, and he does have that team. So shout out to them. It's 2026 now. Those 2025 tax forms are going to start rolling in, so do not wait. Len's going to have a big queue, as they say in jolly old Britain, of people waiting for those taxes, for those tax returns to be done. So don't hesitate. Give Len a call. Go to greenco.com or give him a call at, what's that number, Michael Agresta?
732-634-5100. Green Group.
Shout out to Michael and the whole Agresta family. Appreciate y'all and appreciate Len and the Green Group and everything you guys do for us, but everything you guys do for people in the business as well. Never been a dissatisfied customer. I know a lot of people from the Rail Talk family have reached out to him and had him take care of their taxes. So don't get left behind. Be part of that. He's the one guy, and his team is the one team you want in charge of making sure you're finding every single possible benefit of racehorse ownership or any kind of participation in this business. Go to greenco.com. But you don't have to take it from me. Listen to Tom Ventura, president of OBS. Really excited to get down to OBS in 2 months now. Get started on the 2-year-old season. West Point's going to be there shopping heavily. I know John is going to be as well, and DJ Stable. So really, really excited for the Ocala sales. Listen to Tom tell you about how Len and the Green Group have helped him and his business.
Len has been a phenomenal friend, but for the industry, the horse industry has been good to him, but he has been so good to the horse industry. Well, the Green Group is so entrenched in the horse business that they have the expertise in the business, and they do OBS's accounting and auditing, and we can rely on them for sound, good advice, and we know that we have the people that have the knowledge, because this is a very unique business, and you have to have that knowledge to be able to give that good advice. And we know that he's not having to look things up, because his mind is like a steel trap, and it's all in there. So all the people that work for the Green Group are wonderful to work for, and the leader is Len.
Thank you, Tom. Can't wait to see you down in sunny Ocala. Get rid of this cold weather and look at some of those potential stars for 2026 and beyond. It's an unbelievable atmosphere and experience. So shout out to the team at OBS. See you soon. And shout out to Len and the Green Group. As I said, do not hesitate. He's going to have a lot of people wanting him to do their returns for the 2025 taxes. You know, there's some tax rules that have changed. And obviously there are a lot of benefits as well that have popped up from the new tax law. So learn all about it. Call Len at 732-634-5100 to go to greenco.com. Have I mentioned that you shouldn't hesitate? Real Talk is sponsored by Epic Insurance Brokers, one of the nation's top retail insurance brokers, providing expertise across key lines of insurance like property and casualty, employee benefits, and unique specialty insurance. Our guy, Chris Moore, West Point partner, Chris Moore, leads Epic's equine specialty practice. He's all over the place, the sales, the races. Can't wait to see him down in Ocala in a couple of months. He's got horses himself. This is his passion. If you doubt me for a second, just go check his Twitter feed. You can tell he is absolutely obsessed with horse racing. That's why we love him. We also love him because he runs a great equine specialty practice at Epic. Foaling season right around the corner. All ages sales are happening. Chris even added a couple extra to his broodmare band from the facing December sale. One of the mares Chris purchased was in full. First thing he did, he got prospective full insurance. A lot of insurance companies require you to insure the mare to purchase prospective full insurance, and they'll only allow you to allocate 50% of the purchase price toward the prospective full. That's not what Chris did. He insured his prospective full for 100% of the purchase price because that was the best thing for his investment thesis. And he was able to do it because he knows the markets that will allow you to customize your insurance program to meet your needs. I've told you this time and time again. You got to have someone who is a participant in this business, who knows it inside and out from a participant standpoint, looking after your money and your asset. And Chris is that guy. Give him a call or shoot him a text to start the conversation at 317-650-4519. And that leads us to this week's
Epic Performance of the Week.
We got to get that guy on the show this year. The booming voiceover guy is overdue to do a guest spot on Rail Talk. I think Patty is making it happen. But until then, we're gonna keep extolling the virtues of Epic and the epic performances of the week. This week it is Dazzling Dame, a huge win in the Busanda Stakes at Aqueduct, the last running of the Busanda at Aqueduct. She won by double-digit lengths. John was clued into this. Obviously the 3-year-old filly division is looking better and better by the week. John, tell us a little bit about this filly.
Well, Dazzling Dame did everything to represent her name. She was dazzling. Coming off a layoff from October, off a win at Delaware, she went right to the front and never looked back. In a very even field, Joe, it was a 5-horse field, but 4 of the horses were 7-2 or less in the odds. So, nobody at Aqueduct could decide exactly who to bet. But if you bet on Dazzling Dame, it did pay $6.24 to the win. The daughter of Gervin, the Maryland-bred daughter of Gervin, as it were, was super impressive, finishing up, like you said, Joe, in double digits. There was a lot of real estate between Dazzling Dame and the second place horse, 2 Bits, and that is why Dazzling Dame is this week's
epic performance of the week. But also, you forgot to tease the Derby contest coming up because
that was for you, Joe. I thought that was your role. I didn't want to step on your toes, but if you're giving me the ball, I will run with it for sure. We are pleased to announce that in association with our friends Brett Jones and Airdrie Stud, that they will once again be sponsoring the Kentucky Derby Challenge. The name is to be announced later on because our chief marketing people are still working on that right now. Could it be the Mage Rage? Could it be the Mystic Dan Express? Could it be one of the other in the great stable of stallions of Airdrie Stud? Who knows? We will know soon enough. But this daughter of Gervin is a crossover for a couple of our sponsors, which we love.
Hell yeah. Can't wait for that contest. And we didn't kick Dan out. We had a long discussion about whether or not to bring Dan back after he finished last year. But, he was a good guest on the show, and I think Patty and Julia in particular love him. We don't care for him that much.
Well, it went to the graded stakes committee, and they said, maybe it was a one-off. Maybe he just wasn't prepared enough, which we know. So we'll give him one more chance. But yeah, Dan, this is your warning letter Dan Torres.
As opposed to Sam, who was so prepared that she tuned in from the beach with her Speedo wearing dad in the background. Yeah, she really was burned the midnight oil.
But she won. She won.
Yeah, she won. But that's what it goes to show you. It's like the secretary who wins the March Madness contest. But no, we're excited to do that. Excited to have the sponsorship with Airdrie back. So yeah, little crossover there between our friends at Epic and our friends at Airdrie. Exciting things ahead in 2026. So we are so thrilled to bring this next guest back to the Real Talk studio, friend of the show, on-air host, reporter, and analyst for Santa Anita Park. She's also a contributor to NBC Sports and Sportsline. Michelle Yu, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, guys. This is so exciting.
Oh, it's so good to have you back. Happy New Year. How was your holidays?
It was super busy. It was really good. We took the kids to Florida and did Disneyland or Disney World and Universal for their like Christmas gift. So we did that and then came back to gear up for racing. And then we got rained out of a ton of racing. So that was kind of tumultuous. But overall, it's been a really fun holiday.
Exciting. And I love that you squeezed us in after dropping the kids off this morning. So I appreciate that. Team player as
Not
you are.
Not at the pool, just to be clear. I dropped them
That was earlier.
Pool.
That was before that.
Yeah.
That's why you were spraying the fragrance in the car. Anyway, so I do want to ask about the weather out there. It's obviously been tough, been a lot of cancellations. I'm not asking you to play weather person, but just kind of where are we at? You think we're going to be back to full racing next week?
Yeah, I think it looked like we have a good 10-day stretch right now of no rain. I mean, we got torrential downpours. It was literally our driveway was flooded, our front yard was flooded, the barns are a mess. I'm at the farm right now. You can see like out my window maybe. But we are shin deep in water over here, and it hasn't rained for like 2 days, but I mean, we're trudging through it. So we got a significant amount of water. But to put it into perspective, I'm a child of the drought, right? I'm 42 years old. And since I was a little kid, we've been in drought status in California where you can't, wash stuff and you're not supposed to flush the toilet after you pee and turn off your water when you brush your teeth, which I know other states don't do, but we have always had these protocols. Literally, we just got like an alert that for the first time in decades, California is no longer in a drought.
Wow.
So like to put that into perspective, like all of California's reservoirs are full.
Wow. Well, that's good news then.
Yeah.
Are people starting to build boats out there? Are they building arcs and collecting animals 2 by 2?
No, they do. They just moved to Idaho. That's what I feel like everybody does from California.
Very nice.
I mean, people don't drive very well when it's wet. Let me tell you that much.
Yeah, no, I get it. One of the things that we talked about, Michelle, was the graded stakes committee just came out with some of the announcements, some of the upgrades and downgrades of various racetracks. And I want to give a shout out to your co-host Billy Koch because he did a phenomenal job. He was one of the 11 people who who was involved and having speaking roles and did their analysis and it wasn't just a matter of this race should go up, this race should go down. They went through 900 plus races.
Crazy.
And Billy had comments basically on every single one of them. So I want to give a tip of the cap to him. How does the racing community feel as far as some of these races in California, mostly on the scale getting downgraded versus other racetracks and that are getting kind of an equal number of upgrades, downgrades, or are only getting upgrades? What's the feeling from the barn area, or isn't there any because most people aren't running in these graded stake races?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't heard a lot. Either way, there hasn't been too much grumbling. There's been a little bit of grumbling from the upper levels that do run in it. And I can see both points. First of all, we have races that are prominent and that lead to horses being champions, that lead to Kentucky Derby winners. But a lot of that is because we have a lot of Bob Baffert horses, which are obviously very good. We saw journalism come from here last year. So we have quality horses. It hurts that we don't have like that backup second level that fills the races, right? But on the other hand, would you like to see 5 Bob Bafferts that if they were in 5 different bards, you'd say this is the greatest race ever? Or do you want to see, 1 Bob Baffert and 1 maiden Calbred claimer and whatever to fill the field to make it 9 horses that, 4 of them maybe shouldn't be there. So I think that's always a fine line to walk because you want there to be a lot of betting interest, but you want it to also be a competitive race and a fair race. So I can see both ways. Like I said, I haven't heard too much grumbling one way or the other. I do think it stinks a little bit to lose some of the status, because when you look at some of the names of horses that have won these races, you're like, well, that horse did end up being a good horse, even if it was a compact field that year. He ended up being good. So it's really hard. And I tip my cap to the Graded Stakes Committee, because, we have to draw that line somewhere. We have to figure out what works. And I feel like I'm happy that they are looking at it every year, because that gives us opportunity to change, to grow. Maybe someone's like, oh, I really needed this to be a grade 1, so I'm going to go somewhere else that has a grade 1 now. And maybe we see a little bit more cross-contamination of horses, like, go in different places. Right. So it's a hard job, and it's thankless.
Yeah. And I know one of the considerations also is the fact that, like, we don't have as many options to get horses out to California and back from California. And I know that was one of the, what I would say soft details that was being factored into some of the decision making as well. Have you seen that not only in the graded stake races, but also in, just the full complement of the condition book, is that it's just hard to get people to send horses out there?
Well, people don't want to send horses out here because I feel like they don't want to get beat. And you'll see a lot of East Coast horses will come and they'll think, I'm bringing a good horse, right? They come for the Santa Anita Handicap, and they came for California Crown, even when they come for Breeders' Cup and they run in the undercard races and they run into the California best horses. They can't compete on many, many levels, right? Our horses are faster. We run our races differently. So I think it's just like, if you're going to ship, you want a little bit more of a guarantee, and people don't have that. So if it's easy to ship and it's an hour down the road, okay, if you got to put a horse in the van for 3 days and you think the best you can run is third, it might be a little bit less appealing.
Yeah, no doubt. I want to ask about some of the vet scratch controversy from the Breeders' Cup, because we saw a lot of discussion about that, and I think that you have a unique perspective out in California, because it should get more coverage. The kind of turnaround that Santa Anita and Del Mar, Santa Anita in particular, have had from a safety standpoint, from where we were in 2019 to now. You were running some of the safest racetracks in the country. Of course, that doesn't make the news the way that the breakdowns did, but I know it took a lot of hard work from the vets, from the horsemen and women. It really was a team effort. So I kind of, as much as it sucks, I understand to have a horse get scratched late when you think they're sound. I feel like we gotta be a team player when it comes to this stuff, and it takes a village to make racing safer. You guys have done it. So I'm curious your perspective from all the people that were complaining about the vet scratches, relative to what it takes to have a safe product.
Well, it's hard, and it's been a learning curve, and it's been hard along the way, especially, when you have a horse that might not be the best mover. We've got a horse right now that just has some old arthritis. I'll take a horse we retired, actually, Maven. We had a horse named Maven. He had arthritis in his ankles, and the vets didn't like him because he moved crappy when he would go, right? But he had raced a bunch of times. We had x-rayed him, we had scanned him, but they were just like, look, he's too big of a risk, and we ended up having to retire him. And when we sent him off to Karma, they called and they were like, why'd you retire this horse? Because he is 100% sound. And yeah, he is, but he doesn't wake up in the morning sound, right? Like, he wakes up in the morning and it takes him 10 minutes to warm up to feel that good. So there have been pills like that are tough to swallow. And I'm sure there's a lot of pills along the way that you're like, yeah, you're right. It's really, at this point, you just kind of not argue with the vets, and you ask if you can have a day or two to look at the horse and figure it out. I think the one thing we need to maybe just work on is, if a horse has had diagnostics done and there's nothing to be seen, some horses just might not be great movers. I am a terrible mover when you look at me. Like, I run a lot, but if you watch my mechanics, you would be shocked that I could go past a mile, okay? So some of us might just have some bad mechanics, and there could maybe be just a little bit more leeway on that, I'd say. But overall, we have gotten really used to it in California, and we don't argue with it anymore. And you kind of know, right, when you bring the horse out, if this horse is going to be good for the vets or not good for the vets. And I think a lot of people have a hard time with that, because at home they're used to either not having that vet oversight, or they're used to kind of bullying their way through, or throwing their name around a little bit and being like, hey, do you know who I am? My horse is going to run. You're not going to scratch my horse. And here it's like, the vets have the say. Also, like, when, something goes awry, a lot of times the vets are taking flack for it. So they've got to be comfortable with the horses that we're sending out.
Yeah.
Michelle, aside from all your accolades and well-deserved titles, you're also an active member in the NTWAB, which has their basically their Super Bowl right now when they come out and they vote for the Eclipse finalists. You went through all the divisions. Were there any of them that you were like, wow, this is a really hard division to come up with the absolute winner? Or did you feel like, yeah, it was pretty slam dunk all the way through?
I thought there were a couple of divisions that were really up in the air. I thought older male was one of those, and it goes back to the question of, does one race in America count if it's our biggest race, right? I also thought that the older filly division was a little muddied because the horse that won the Breeders' Cup didn't win another race all year.
Right.
And I felt that way a year or two ago too with Safi's filly that won the sprint. I'm like, how do you give it to her when she, you know what I mean?
Right.
The filly sprint I felt was challenging as well. So there were, and turf horse, there were definitely some categories that you could go a bevy of ways. I know dirt sprinter is going to be a big question mark, because do you go with the Breeders' Cup winner, or do you go with the horse that has a little bit better body of work overall that bypassed the Breeders' Cup just because? And I think people are really upset with the just because, right? Like they didn't bypass it because he was hurt, or like came there like Sovereignty and got sick. They were just like, nah, not going to run. So,
so who'd you vote? Who'd you vote for in that? Now that it's over, now that the
I voted for Bookham Dano. I went with Bookham Dano. I thought he had the overall better body of work.
Right.
So for me, that's what I went with. John, I did vote for Nitrogen for top 3-year-old filly.
Who else would you vote for?
Well, I thought She's So Spicy had a really good opportunity there to kind of say, I should be 3-year-old champion, because I did vote for her for female turf horse.
Right.
And I did stick her in the female, something, I don't remember what else, but something else, right? So
probably
in
the sprinter,
theory, I should have put her. Yeah, maybe
sprinter,
female sprinter. Yep. And I should have maybe put her for 3-year-old also because of that, but I just felt like Nitrogen's overall body of work was better. She was more versatile. Right. She, obviously she ran on dirt. She won grade 1s and 2 surfaces. I mean, this is a filly that I feel like we should look at, even though she lost the Breeders' Cup. Overall, she was to me the better 3-year-old, even if She's So Spicy won these. I felt like she was just in a little bit more of a compact box.
So you're a body of work voter more so than, a spectacular performance voter. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I think that would be a fair way to state it. I mean, for example, for trainer, I put Bill Mott. Right. Because, did Bob Baffert and Todd Pletcher and Brad Cox and Steve Asmussen have better numbers and more wins and everything? And it was, I looked at Bob heavily because he had so many great stakes wins, but overall, Bill Mott strung together a fantastic campaign for Sovereignty that we all really relished the ride. We saw just masterful handling of multiple horses, right? He won turf races, dirt races. He won the Breeders' Cup with a different horse. So I just felt like this year, his body of work was fantastic. So I wanted to give it to him rather than just go by who's tops on the numbers, right? Which really annoys me. I felt that for owner too. Like, I think Godolphin was a very deserving owner because they just had such a breadth of wins and they just towered above everybody. But I put DJ Stables because you guys are a single person that teams together with, some other stuff, but really you guys are just one family. And I felt this way about Gary Barber in years past too. When you look at your number of starts and your number of wins and the horses that you brought forward, there's not a lot of single owners that you can list 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of their horses because they're that good, right? Unless it's Juddmonte, Godolphin, Spendthrift. Big conglomerate. So I feel like anytime you see an owner that is, a named owner and you can list off their horses for that year, that's pretty darn good. You might not have 700 horses running like Godolphin. You might have 15, and I could name half of them. That's incredible to me.
Yep.
Well, just to follow up on that, I hope you don't break my heart. Who did you vote for 2-year-old filly?
I voted for Cy-Fair. Sorry. Does it help that I bet on Super Corridora? She looked so good.
No, it does not help at all. And now I'm worried.
Well,
all right.
She just had a little bit better body of work. But also, what you have in your corner is the fact that she won the dirt. Right. I think the turf horse thing is really hard for a lot of people to swallow. Like they want to shove them into another box. So, I mean,
Right.
you've got a good shot. Although Philip Shelton was out here campaigning,
Oh
man.
my God. Yeah, no, we got into it on Twitter about that. And yeah, I'm
Why
doing
do
my
you think you should get it? Why do you, I want to know, why do you think you
well,
should
if you
get it
watch the
over?
show, you would hear my
Mhm.
my spiel about it, but I guess I gotta reiterate it
She was
to
in
you.
Disney. Give her a break. She's in Disney with her
Yeah.
kids.
I just think like relative to, like I'm not impressed in general by 5 furlong races. Like it just relative to what Super Corridor had to do running the fast pace the way she did, holding off a bunch of grade 1 winners and grade 2 winners. I just thought that was so much more difficult than what Sci-Fair had to do. She obviously had the blowout win before that. It was a maiden win. I understand that, but I just don't think, nobody at the beginning of the year with a nice 2-year-old filly is like, wow, I can't wait to run in the turf sprint this summer or fall. And that's no disrespect.
I hear it all the
All right. So
time.
you're the outlier. That's why you
She's
voted
one.
for her. And again, that's no disrespect to Cypher. She had a tremendous year. She's a really, really nice filly. But I just think overall what Super Corridor had to do was a more difficult feat. So that's where I'm at. But whatever. The Homer hour is over. I have a question for you from the broadcasting perspective, because I think it's a compliment. I think you do a really good job kind of speaking very plainly to people. Like, I think that, I think a lot of people in racing feel like they have to like put on this proper personality and all that stuff. You're a plain spoken person, and that's how I am. So I appreciate hearing that on the air. That's past that compliment. I have a question about kind of where we are from a broadcasting standpoint, because the Kentucky Derby ratings are better and better every single year. Breeders' Cup continues.
I thought you were going to say where we are from a Super Corridor training standpoint. I was going to tell you 2 thumbs up.
Okay,
She looks so
I
good.
know she does, but I already know you didn't vote for her. So thanks for trying to get back in my good graces.
Hey, there's always a 3-year-old.
And wait a second. Just
Just
because Michelle didn't vote for her doesn't mean that the rest, there's 200 and something.
Okay, but now I got to go poll the rest of them because it's 1-0 in my mind.
Oh my goodness! and you know what, Michelle? People follow her lead. I'm sure that
we'll just cut that out. Don't worry, we'll cut that out of the show. My question is, from the inside, as a broadcaster, I think we're doing a lot of good things. Ratings would agree. Do you think that we've struck that right balance on the national broadcast between, speaking to the regular horse player and horse person and speaking to the novice? And are there any things that you think we could do better to kind of pump up, the interest, even though, we've done a really good job in the last couple of years?
We certainly have a good job. I think that if you're exclusively talking about like the big broadcasts, we maybe keep it a little more simple for them, and ignore our horse player just a smidge, even though there's like glimpses of really good stuff for them. But also we've given them another outlet, right? The everyday horse player doesn't need to turn in to the NBC Kentucky Derby show to find out what they want to know. They have their own way of doing it. So I don't think that show is necessarily catered towards, your hardcore at the track horse player who's not sitting at home watching, by the way. He's in the simulcast room underneath Santa Anita betting hand over fist. So I do think that we are bringing racing to a lot more people. I think it's becoming so much more accessible, especially with people like Griffin out there that are taking videos, and people get to see behind the scenes and they see all this stuff. And I think it makes it really fun. I think we need to keep embracing things like that make us uncomfortable right now. Looking at the Umasume people, and everyone's up in arms. Oh my gosh, they want to dress like a horse. Do you know when these people came to Santa Anita, there were like 2,000 of them that came, and I interviewed a couple of them. They legitimately, I'm like, well, tell me about Contrail. And they're like, oh, he does that. Like, they know his offspring, they know his pedigree, they know his races. Like, they know more about these horses than I know. Obviously, I don't follow Japan racing very closely, but they know all about them. They have made it their fun and their point to learn about these horses. And so they are learning about racing. Do they bet millions of dollars right now? No, but like now there's been people that have started at Umasume and that are buying a racehorse just because they want to have their own. So, anything that we can do that's a pathway to interest in horse ownership, I feel like we should embrace and we should help flourish and not be so upset over things that change. I think the broadcast shows are great. I love seeing all the stories. I like seeing insight from different people. I think that if I was going to change anything, I would maybe I would maybe do like a mini bio on every horse. I feel like we do the big story horses and we cover them really well. Obviously we cover like people that we know or like stories that are out there. But how about just on every single horse, like a 2-minute package? I know that would be a ton of behind the scenes legwork and is probably just too labor intensive to do. But that would be very cool if we were somehow able to do that for all of our big races. Like, not just a meet the field, but like when you watch the AKC Kennel Club, I love that they're like, here's, Michelle's fancy French bulldog. She goes by the name of Charlotte, and she likes to eat kibble in the mornings, but only ground beef in the afternoons.
Yeah.
And you learn a little bit more. And so, like, just something fun. I feel like for your everyday person might be like, oh, you know what? I love kibble in the afternoons too. And it just might make them like, attach to a horse more. That makes them want to follow them. Just trying to like give people more reason. And I feel like true horse players will hate that idea a lot because they're like, you should just like the horse because of this, or this. We're trying to find people and get them to be fans for a number of reasons. When you're scrolling through TikTok, you're right. It should be like an FYP. I'm trying to find what the FYP is for people and their horses.
Yeah, and for all the
right?
boomers that watch this show, FYP means for you page. It's the
For your
suggestion
page.
page on Instagram or TikTok or whatever. But no, that's a great point. I think, and that could like foster connection to the horse down the road if you see them on another broadcast. So I think that's very, very, very good point.
And that actually bridges to my
Right?
actually bridges to my final question, which is, now I don't know if you realize, Michelle, but you have been added to the or I should say, you being included again in the roster of experts who are going to be participating in this year's Kentucky Derby contest with us again. Okay.
Woo! I hope I don't run last.
Don't worry, Dan's going to be back.
Dan will be back. Yeah, we're bringing back the band. So maybe we should do.
Is Samantha going to
We're
be on
not
the
sure.
beach?
She has to.
I think she has to be.
If Samantha is going to be on the beach, I feel like I have to up my background game.
That's up to you.
Like the car with the sweater
her dad
vest is like,
in a Speedo is still up for bid if you want to have him fly out to California. Yeah,
fly him out. What if I got someone else to be in a Speedo? What if I got like Mike Smith to walk through my screen in a Speedo? Or maybe like nude with like just like the button shot like he did in the calendar.
All right.
Now you're thinking outside the box.
You might get extra bonus points for that. But yes, we are going to do it again, which will be great. So that'll be in the next couple of weeks. We'll be getting the team back together and after the first few January preps go through, so that way we can do a draft and again have our second annual. We don't know to be named, Kentucky Derby contest, which is awesome. We're pleased to have you back. My final parting shot is I found, I talk to my wife, Michelle, all the time about the show and who we're going to have on. And when I told her a couple of days ago that I was having who I call other Michelle, which is you, obviously, she was so excited.
You're telling all our secrets now, Jon.
And I understand that like you guys have been communicating now with each other about like what you're going to wear, or if we come out for California, what should she bring, or are you coming to? So is there any message that you want to have specifically? Just talk right into the camera as if you're talking to my wife Michelle, and just give her a quick hello if you could, because that would just make her week.
Hi, Michelle. I hope that you're going to be in Florida so we can maybe get together. Sans Jon. I mean, I guess you can come. It's fine. But maybe we can go to dinner.
Are you going to be there for?
Or have
Are you going to be there for the eclipse?
I'm going to be there for Pegasus.
Okay. I think we're actually going to be out.
Is that
Yeah.
Are you leaving?
Yeah.
Are you in and out?
Always.
Michelle, I'll get 2 beds in my room if you want to stay an extra day or 2, and we can do up the Pegasus, and it'll be fun.
There you go. Perfect. That was the best offer Michelle's had in a long time. So to be able to be roomies with you would be. We had such a good time having sushi with you pre Breeders' Cup, and my kids were there and everything. We had so much fun sitting outside with you and eating sushi.
I had so much fun. It was very stressful because I suggested a restaurant that was, and then I found out like Jon hates all fish.
Well,
just uncooked fish. I still don't know what I ate that night. I don't know what you were like. No, it was something smoked out of. It was a great presentation, but I had no clue.
Yeah, John, I'm like, why did you say this was okay if you
I'm a
don't
team
eat
player.
raw fish? Because we ordered like a smorgasbord of raw things. You guys have mentioned team player like 4 times on the show. You know, I own a
We
horse named
do.
Team
It's a
Player.
subtle way to get you more likes. Yes. You
All
think this
right.
is all not by
My
design?
$5,000
All
Calvin.
right, Michelle, 2 votes for John, no votes for me. You. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Hey, that's not fair. That's not fair. I put Super
That
Corridor
doesn't
second.
mean
There you
anything.
go.
It's only first place vote. But that's
I
okay.
know.
That's okay. We love you anyway. I guess I just got to take you out to dinner next time I'm in California. That's how it works.
Maybe you can brush my hair with your
Hey,
beard
right
brush.
my Michelle might want to do that. You don't know.
Brush my hair with a beard brush.
With Joe's beard brush. Yes.
Looks like we lost Michelle there. Appreciate her jumping on from the car, but great interview as always. Friend of the show. Excited to see her down in Florida for the Pegasus. So I know you can't hear me, Michelle, but thank you, Michelle, for coming on the show. No thank you for the no vote for the Eclipse winner, but we love you anyway, and we'll talk to you soon on the Derby contest. Real Talk is sponsored by TaylorMade, best in the business in so many facets of the industry. Obviously, the sales, particularly the yearling sales, but also the digital sales, some of the older horse sales, Keeneland January sales coming up. I'm sure they'll have a heavy consignment there. The Stallion Barn continues to grow every single year. Not this time as obviously the headliner, but a lot of nice stallions and kind of underneath him on that roster. You should definitely check out boarding. They do it all. And now that the voting is officially in, I can shout out Cy-Fair for a tremendous year as a 2-year-old filly. So she is a finalist along with Super Corridor. So look forward to seeing those guys down at the Eclipse Awards. But just appreciate TaylorMade and the sponsorship and everything they do for the industry. Another big year on the horizon. And John, you have a close relationship with them.
Well, I can't speak enough about TaylorMade. They do everything for us with regard to marketing and sales and boarding and everything in between. But Joe, one of the highlighted horses they'll be selling in the upcoming January sale is our entry, Tiffany Case, who is the dam of Grade 1 winner, Nitrogen, and hopefully soon to be Eclipse Award winner, one would hope. But more importantly, she is in full to Super Stallion, probably the number 2 ranked stallion in the country. Not this time, that stands at TaylorMade. So Tiffany Case packaged with an in utero foal of Not This Time sounds like a winning ticket. Sounds like TaylorMade has maybe, hopefully, the sales topper for the upcoming January sale.
So, our very own Jon Green got behind the velvet rope of the American Graded Stakes Committee. That's why he was away in December, and we're very proud. And he's all grown up now. He's one of the glitterati in racing officially. He's a celebrity. He's a mover and a shaker. He's a mover. I don't know if he's a shaker yet, but he's trying. The American Graded Stakes Committee, of Toba, proud friend of the show, announced on December 19th, this was while we were off, the listing of the U.S. graded stakes and listed stakes races for 2026. And the grading session happened on December 17th and the 18th. I want to know more about the process, which is something that, we haven't had a lot of insight on. And that's, part of the reason I'm glad that John is on that committee. But just to give you the top line numbers, the committee, and quoting from the Blood Horse story here, the committee reviewed 942 U.S. stakes races with a purse of at least $75,000, assigned graded status to 410 of them, 5 fewer than were graded in 2025, and listed status to 211 races. 11 graded races were upgraded, 1 new grade 1 and 10 new grade 2 races were named, 4 new grade 3 races were identified, 9 new listed races and 1 new listed restricted race were upgraded from non-listed black type status. 13 graded races were downgraded, 2 grade 1, 5 grade 2, and 6 grade 3 races were demoted. 6 listed races were downgraded to non-listed black type status. Multiple races were downgraded in California, which, as we mentioned in the opening segment, this is one of the states that does not have gaming to supplement the purses. Talk a little bit more about the granular, upgrades and downgrades. But first, I want to hear from John about his experience in that graded stakes committee meeting. What was it like?
Well, first and foremost, Joe, I want to thank Toba for allowing me to be a participant in the audience. So I had a non-speaking role. There were 9 or 10 of us that were kind of in the audience that were not allowed to voice our opinions or questions during the course of the race reviews. And Joe, they reviewed over 900 individual races, if you can imagine that process. And to my surprise, because you and I talk about it, in the past, there were no less than 7 or 8 different factors that go into the formula and the rubric of deciding whether or not a race is going to be upgraded, downgraded, or remain the same. And basically what they did was it's a panel of about a half a dozen racing officials, from California, New York, obviously Kentucky, Florida, that represented, the major tracks. And then they also had individuals that represented some of what I would call the mid-range or smaller regions. So there was a representative there from the Mid-Atlantic Racing Consortium. There was a representative there from Monmouth Park. There was a representative there from Remington Park. So you had basic information and insight from all the angles, as far as I would be concerned, from the racing officials, from owners, from breeders, and from people who were in the know of the various regions. And basically what they do is, I'm not going to go into the whole process because we'll put everybody to sleep because it's just a lot of information. Basically what they do is they have one individual who handles a division. So it'll be 2-year-old colt division, 3-year-old filly division, 3 and up turf sprinting. And they kind of act as the master of ceremonies for that division. And they go over what's happened over the years, what's happened with various racetracks, whether or not they're increasing the number of stake races in that division, decreasing or remaining the same. And then they go through a very thorough 5-year history of each race and go through and see not only who won, but also who participated, what graded stakes earnings they've received, post that race, and other factors that went into it. That quite frankly, again, I was surprised at just the depth of knowledge and information that was being discussed on a regular basis. And it was a day and a half long. I mean, it was 9 hours the first day and 4.5 hours the second day, going through each of the divisions. And like I said, over 900 races individually to come up with all these decisions. Now, one of the things that I was also surprised about, Joe, is it's not just the hard facts that go into it. There's some, what I would call some soft details that influence voting as well. For example, Monmouth Park, their signature day is Haskell Day. And a couple of years ago, like most racetracks have been doing, Monmouth pushed a couple of races onto their Haskell Day card. So instead of spreading out the graded stake races they clustered 4 or 5 graded stake races on their signature day. And the first couple of years, it didn't necessarily translate over. If it was a grade 3, maybe there was like a listed group of horses that were going into it. And normally that would be a big negative. But the soft detail of the fact that was Monmouth's signature day, and if you took a grade 3, for example, and reduced it to a listed stake, it would deter, in their estimation, the bigger outfits that were sending horses in for the Haskell to send undercard horses in as well. And then it would just be a self-fulfilling prophecy down the tubes. So they do take factors like that into account. They take factors into account, like at Penn National, when the Penn Mile got moved not once but twice because of weather, and half the field was decimated because of it, because horses just didn't either ship in or they ran in other places. They gave this year's race like what I would call a do-over, where they would say, "Hey, this doesn't really necessarily show the horses that would have run in the race if it was run 2.5 weeks earlier like it was supposed to be. That field was a legitimate grade 3 field." So they go in and they look at hard and fast numbers, soft details that could influence the rationale as to why things happened. And then they also look at it and they say, why do we have 4 grade 3 races for the same group, over and over again the same weekend? And again, it's not TOBA's graded stakes committee to dictate which racetracks should or shouldn't have the same race on the same weekend. But basically what they do is they send what I'm calling a warning letter to the racetracks, where they say your race is in danger of losing its status, whether it's grade 2 to grade 3, grade 3 to listed, or listed to a non-black type. You need to do something to upgrade the horse population that is running in this year's race, or we're pretty much telling you, without saying it's a definite, we're pretty much telling you that your race is going to be downgraded. Okay. And that's something new or I shouldn't say it's new. That's something that's been revived over the past couple of years in the rationale of total, transparency, of saying to these racetracks, we're giving you a warning shot, guys and gals. Here is your chance to make a change. If you need to change the distance to encourage other horses to come in, do that. We're not telling you how to do it. We're not telling you what to do, but be on notice. Okay. It's almost like when I was on academic probation in college. Okay. You're on notice, kid. We're not kicking you out. We're going to cash your parents' check. But ultimately, if things don't change, we're going to make the change for you. And I think that's really important on a lot of levels, because that way the racetracks aren't surprised when these decisions are made. And I think that was something that 3 or 4 years ago was a real concern of the racetracks was, hey, we weren't getting the kind of notice that we should have unless we had a person in the room when these decisions are being made. So again, it's not a new strategy. I'm sure I'm not giving the exact dates right, because again, I was just in there as an observer, but I walked away from the day and a half meeting, not only being so pent up because I couldn't say anything for a day and a half, if you can imagine, but just enamored with the process and having a much better understanding of the process. And the thing that you and I had railed on in the past, no pun intended, is how come Kentucky isn't getting any downgrades? And this year they did get a couple of downgrades, but more importantly, I have a better understanding as to why. They're not getting downgraded because, quite frankly, they're drawing the right kind of horses year in and year out to their racetracks and to their races. And other tracks like that aren't Kentucky are not able to do that. So Kentucky continues to be kind of this the stalwart of racing, and other jurisdictions are losing horse population and good horse population to those races, primarily because again, they're offering the money and they're offering the status of graded stakes, black type. And, that's what's driving the majority of these decision making, in not necessarily in that order. It's really, for fillies, it's really the graded ability and because there's so much monetization of that down the road when they're sold, and for the colts, if it's a grade 1, the stallion prospects go up tremendously if they get a grade 1 next to their name. So Joe, I was I know I've been kind of talking on and on for a few minutes now about the process, but to me it was just eye-opening at just the depth of information and of homework that these guys and men and women do that are on the they're on the panel, because for a lot of them, like, their lifeblood and livelihood depends on it.
Yeah, I mean, that's great insight, and it's good to hear the process, because I think that's been one of our criticisms in the past, is that it's just a very opaque process. And I honestly would love it if they stream some of these discussions at some point, just so people can figure out what goes into it. Because as you mentioned, there's a lot riding on these decisions, and it's, if I didn't have you to talk to, I would still be kind of in the dark. And I think a lot of our audience probably appreciates you giving some of that, behind the scenes insight as well. I think it's interesting. I didn't know that there were, so many representatives from the different racetracks that are there. So that's good that they're at least in the room when these decisions are being made. I mean, field size has to be a big consideration, right? I think that's got to be one of the main reasons that so many races in California got downgraded. It's just, there are so many 5 and 6 horse graded stakes out there. And, let's be real. Bob Baffert has 3 or 4 horses in so many of these races. It's not, and I love California racing, and I want to see it survive for the long term, but it's just, there's so many races where it's well, do you pick this Baffert or that Baffert or that Baffert? And then maybe there's 1 horse from Sadler and 1 horse from McCarthy. Right. And it's just it's not sustainable to have one guy have so many of the top horses out there. And for anybody that's making a stink about the California downgrades, maybe stop giving all of your horses to the same trainer.
Right.
Maybe stop giving every single big figure, sale purchase to the same trainer. Maybe diversify a little bit, and then maybe we'll get some bigger fields, and then maybe these races don't get downgraded in the future. So I think some of the people that are complaining are part of the problem in California, frankly, and it just is a little hypocritical. I'm curious about a couple of things. Is there any discussion about like the overall number of graded stakes? Because I still think there are way too many. Like 410, only getting rid of 5 of them. They're just still way too many. I think that the decline in graded stakes and stakes should mirror the full crop decline. And 5 out of 410. Like I'm trying to figure out the math there. Like that's like what 0.2%, or it's like 1.2%. I think
1%. It's one.
Yeah, a little over 1%. And I rarely see more downgrades than that. And the full crop certainly has dropped a lot more than that in the last 10, 15 years or so. Is there any discussion, John? And I get that they have to like take it on a case by case basis. Like you can't just downgrade races just to do it. But is there discussion at least about the total number of grade stakes relative to the horses that are out there?
Yeah, I think that would be better answered by actually somebody on the committee that has all the numbers and has the back history. Because again, I was only there for the one time, so I'm gonna defer that answer. What I can tell you, Joe, is that the graded stakes races represent about 4% of the overall races that are run on a given year. Granted, they're the most important, in my opinion, the most important 4% that are out there, unless we have a horse running in a claiming race, and then that race is the most important race that I have of the season. But so in the grand scheme of things, you can say percentage wise, it's really not that big of a deal. And we're talking about a small number, but impactfulness, it's tremendous. I mean, it moves and shakes basically the commerciability and saleability of the foals from that family. So it is of utmost importance. I will say that they being the graded committee is very conscious of the pyramid, of having a certain number of grade ones, and then I don't know the exact number, but I'm going to say it was like twice as many grade 2s, twice as many grade 3s, and then listed. So there is a mathematical formula that they want to invoke. It is not the only decision making part of the process by any stretch of the imagination. But yeah, I think as far as like, hey, why aren't they downgrading more? According to the rubric and the factors that they feel are important, and that they use towards upgrading or downgrading races, they're looking at it kind of holistically and saying, is this grade 3 still a grade 3? Is this grade 3 of 2025 field the same as it was in 2015? Okay, from that standpoint. So they're trying to make it so a grade 3 at Remington and a grade 3 at Monmouth is the same as a grade 3 at Kentucky Downs or at Saratoga. That's really what they're trying to focus on, more so than, hey, should we downgrade it because there's less horses in the population, but there's also a lot of less bad horses too. In the grand scheme of things, and I think that's part of the overall equation that they factor in.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I also think like it's interesting, the consideration of what similar races are being run on top of each other.
Yeah, because
someone has got to have that conversation with some of these tracks, because they sure as hell don't have it amongst themselves with so many weekends with 3-year-old races on top of each other.
Right.
Like you see it, especially in the summer, especially in the Mid-Atlantic. Like it just, someone has got to intervene and be like, hey, you're competing for the same horses this weekend as this other track. What are you going to do about it? So that's interesting as well.
And Joe, there was probably one of the longest discussions that occurred wasn't about one particular race. It was exactly that point. It was a 3-year-old group, races from July until basically, the September sale. Okay. And in that 10-week window, just the number of graded stake races for 3-year-old colts, and how they were cannibalizing each other, especially in a time when all these horses are running so hard to get to the Triple Crown races. And then there's like a pause, and then you want all of them to come back and try to compete against each other when, how many horses were cross-entered in the Jim Dandy and the Haskell? It was like half of both the fields. And basically people were just like pivoting like, okay, well, where is this horse going? If this horse goes there, then I'm going to go here. And one's a grade 2 and one's a grade 1. And if we get rid of the grade 1 in this case, then that's going to kill that race, because then it's not Baffert's not going to bring his horses in, for example. I mean, this, so therefore it's not really going to be it's not going to be a stallion marker anymore. And that'll doom that particular racetrack. These are my comments, I'm not saying anything out of school as far as, what was discussed. But there were a lot of conversations about that exact problem. And I can't say again that TOBA Grading Stakes Committee has the ability to adjudicate that. But afterwards, the major powers that be were in that room, and I will guarantee you that they were having conversations about how do we do this? How do we make the schedule better for 3-year-old colts in this example? And there was another one also for you'll see if you look at the patterns, there were a lot of turf sprints that were being upgraded. Well, how do we avoid the same situation, with this kind of, developing fact pattern in our industry where people want to have more turf, sprinters, and therefore we need to have a path, to kind of give these horses a chance to go. And a lot of things I noticed were like backwards from the Breeders' Cup or forwards from the last set of Derby preps and Oaks preps in April. They were really focused on that window of how do we work forward and backwards. And again, those were more conversations, sidebar conversations for the racing officials that were there, but they were being discussed, and those conversations, were definitely heated and definitely important for the future of racing.
And now that I have a guy on the inside, I will get the Curlin Stakes killed. That is my mission in 2026 and beyond. That's my hobby horse. Is again on top of like the Jim Dandy and the Haskell. We don't need another 3-year-old 2-turn race on the same weekend.
Yeah, but that's like a restricted. That's for horses that have never won a graded stake race before.
Who cares? Running the Jim Dandy. It's the end of July. Why do we need a restricted 3-year-old stake at the end of July? Like. Right. I can't have it. And it's again like that. That's my mission now to get rid of that race. And, just before we wrap this up, and it's a great discussion, I just wanted to go over some of the upgrades and downgrades in particular. The ladies turf sprint at Kentucky Downs. That's the only new grade 1 this year. Right. And I think that makes a lot of sense. Obviously the purses are through the roof, but shout out to AG Bullet, I think, who kind of single-handedly got that race upgraded because she won it the last 2 times. She also won the Jaipur grade 1 against males in June, and she hit the board in the 2024 and 2025 Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. So she got that race upgraded, but obviously makes a lot of sense. 2 races were downgraded from grade 1
Joe,
to grade.
I will. Sorry, just to interrupt you. They were very particular about saying that one horse doesn't make it. Okay, it's the depth of the field in totality. So I know you're saying like the AG Bullet. I just because I was there. It didn't hurt. Yeah, it definitely didn't hurt. But it was really because of the full field over the past couple of years and what they've gone on to do thereafter. But yeah, the AG Bullet effect I think was important. Yes.
Yeah. And so 2 races were downgraded from grade 1 to grade 2. The Franklin Simpson at Kentucky Downs, which was, I thought that was a ridiculous upgrade a couple of years ago when they made that race a grade 1. They corrected that. The Kilroe Mile going down from a grade 1 to a grade 2 at Santa Anita. 10 races were upgraded to grade 2. The Shawnee and the Unbridled Sydney at Churchill, the Green Flash at Del Mar, the Bryan Station, the Double Dog Dare, and the Giants Causeway at Keeneland, the Ladies Turf Stakes and the Nashville Derby at Kentucky Downs, the Molly Pitcher at Monmouth, and the Caress at Saratoga. I think those pretty much all make sense, and it's good to see the Molly Pitcher, the Caress, and the Green Flash in particular getting upgraded. 5 races were downgraded from grade 2 to grade 3 for 2026. The Fort Marcy and the Sands Point at Belmont and Aqueduct, the Gulfstream Mile, and the Joe Hernandez and Santa Maria at Santa Anita. 4 races were upgraded to grade 3 for 2026. The Hanshin and the Maxfield at Churchill Downs, don't really care about that. The Indian Summer and the Limestone Stakes at Keeneland, I think that makes sense. And then 6 races were downgraded from grade 3 to listed, no longer graded stakes. The Red Carpet at Del Mar, the Pucker Up at Ellis. That's a little sad because that was an Arlington Park race. Yeah. The Greenwood Cup at Parks, and the Honeymoon, the Las Fresnas, and the Palos Verdes at Santa Anita. I'll try not to take it personally that the Las Vergendas got downgraded as soon as we said we were pointing Super Corridor there, but it's fine. But overall, I think the upgrades and downgrades make a lot of sense. Again, my overall beef is that there are still too many grade stakes races, but it's hard to argue with the individual decisions here. And I'm glad we have a guy in the room now to tell us how it all works.
Well, I was invited that year. I don't know if I'll be invited back, but yes, but definitely. And Joe, again, I think to pat ourselves on the back because we're very good at doing that here. You do notice that there are a couple of Kentucky stake races that were downgraded.
That's right.
And that hadn't happened in 2 straight years.
Yep. So I think it's some course correction for sure. And again, great to know, more about how it all works. All right, so that's going to do it for episode 118 of Rail Talk. So great to be back with all of you after the holiday break. Hope you had a happy new year, happy 2026. Looking forward to making more memories with our viewers and our listeners in this new year. Appreciate my co-pilot, Jon Green, as always. Thank you to Michelle Yu for stopping by. Always great to chat with Michelle. Thank you to our producer, Patty Wolf, our associate producers, Julia Agresta and Nathan Wilkinson. And shout out to Julia's brother, Peter, who is a loyal listener of the show. It's his birthday. Appreciate you, Peter. And just before we go, I want to say horseflesh. That is just for you, my guy. Shout out to Peter and the whole Agresta crew. Thank you for tuning in. So glad to be back with you guys, and we'll see you next week back here on Rail Talk.